Hi everyone, I'm Daisy Victoria, and welcome to a video all about researching a historical fashion and then taking that research to create a fantasy gown, specifically a dress for a special holiday that honors a cultural tradition. In this video, I will be adapting 16th century German Renaissance artwork to create a fantasy gown with a pre-Raphaelite feel. Because it is super fun to research historical costuming. But what about those costumes that are purposefully fantasy but still have that very clear historical aesthetic and influence? Well friends, that happens to be something that I love. In fact, sometimes those projects are actually more challenging than straight up historical because you still need to do the historical research and know what that is, while also employing a different type of creativity and innovation. And in this type of a project, the only limitations are those you choose to put on yourself and your project for your goals. For this project, I will be doing just that. I am taking a historical costume idea and making it not historically accurate on purpose. Specifically, I am doing this for a cultural holiday that honors my heritage. Santa Lucia, or Saint Lucia, is a beloved Christmas tradition occurring on December 13th, which was actually the winter solstice on the old calendar. Fun fact, in Sweden, Christmas is still called Jul, which we English speakers know as the old pagan name for the winter holiday. Santa Lucia is celebrated wearing a white dress with a red sash and a crown of candles. Lucia is a representation of the Lady of Light. During the winter, especially in the far north regions where Santa Lucia is celebrated, the daylight hours in winter are extremely limited. On the solstice, the longest night of the year, it is a tradition in many cultures to celebrate this with a festival of light within the darkness. I will be doing a feature video on St. Lucia Day wearing this dress, so please come back if you'd like to hear more about the history and traditions of St. Lucia Day in Sweden. This project is also a collaboration within Costtube. Some of us are doing a project called Home for the Holidays because we are at home for the holidays this year. So go ahead and check out the playlist in my description if you want to see some more of what the other cool costume people are doing. I created this dress behind me here to be Santa Lucia, and I also created it in a manner such that the dress can be used as a sample for a fantasy bridal dress without the belt and the crown of candles. That way I can do a gown like this in any color or variation. I can easily make that for multiple people, and I'll be adding that to my shop. For this project, I was inspired by 16th century German artwork. I knew I wanted to do a Renaissance gown this year, and I love the aesthetic of the German region in this era. As a side note, I always feel a little bit more correct to say the Holy Roman Empire because the region I love is not really the same as what we think of as modern day unified Germany, though German still certainly works to get the point across. So let's go into a little bit of my research. Throughout this era and region, we see a lot of sleeves with puffing and slashing. In fact, that's one thing they're very well known for. And Lucas Cranach is one of my favorite painters who depicted a lot of these gowns. The chemise worn underneath these dresses is known as a hemd, which is the German word for the chemise or shirt. A hemd may have some different variations, and there's a lot of volume needed to pull all that fabric through all those slashes in those big sleeves. I have found some evidence in paintings of sleeves that are both long and wide. In fact, so long and wide that they remind me of those fantasy princess sleeves that you sometimes see in fantasy movies, or like pre-Raphaelites. I knew I wanted to do something with those sleeves. Though for this project, I didn't want to do quite the same puff and slash sleeves that you see in these paintings. Rather, I thought it would be cool to do a sleeveless dress with some armbands to pull in the chemise sleeves and make it look like it does behind me here. Well, friend, as I was searching for additional reference images to continue looking into the construction method of the hemd, because while I've done different types of shirts before, I wanted to try something new because I always like to challenge myself. So I'm looking for these reference images, and I go to Pinterest and type in a single word, and the algorithm gave me a painting by Cranach featuring Saint Catherine wearing a sleeveless gown with fantasy armbands. Now, St. Catherine is a saint, so is St. Lucia. So it's pretty perfect. I actually hadn't seen this in historical art from the period, and I thought I'd made it up. I am very thankful, and also I'm convinced computers are becoming sentient because they knew what I was thinking. So thank you, computer overlords. By the way, guys, this picture is so cool. I kind of want to actually make the historical version of this at a later date because I kind of need to have it. I created my hemmed using white chiffon. Now in period, it would not have been made using polyester chiffon. In fact, we would be looking at a linen, like a fine linen. But for this fantasy gown, chiffon was exactly what I wanted. Chiffon is one of those fabrics I both love and hate because it looks amazing, but it's kind of a jerk to work with. For this project though, it wasn't that bad because I was working with all rectangular shapes, which are a little bit easier to sew than curves when you have a pesky fabric like chiffon. Here's a little bit of me making it. All right, so I am currently working on my sheer chiffon chemise for this dress. Now, before I show you where I'm at on the chemise, I actually tested out how I was gonna do the sleeves and a bit of the pattern by using 1/4 scale models. Now, these are not the fabrics that I'm using on the chemise, so I knew that they would behave a little differently. I just wanted to kind of test the sizing, like the relative sizing of everything. So I tried first, look how adorable this is. This is actually leftover fabric from my Halloween dress. I tried this idea of patterning using more of the Elizabethan, like English Tudor kind of smock. I did like it quite well, but in the end, I decided I'm gonna also try the more German style, and this is organza, so it's like really crazy. But I ended up trying out another variation, doing another patterning, which is based on the German chemises, or hemmed as they're called in German, in the 16th century. And ultimately I decided to go with a more German style since my dress is more German influenced than it is English anyway, especially with the sleeve style I ended up going with. So that's what I did. And I got to work on the chiffon next. Now, if you guys want a pattern for this type of chemise, let me know. I haven't made one yet. If you're watching this video in the distant future, perhaps there's one already available and linked. But if you're watching it when it first came out, there is not. Now, if I do make a pattern or a tutorial, I'll probably make another one in linen, so it's a little bit easier and probably more versatile for reenacting. So this is my chemise so far. It's basically a lot of big pieces of chiffon. And so the sleeves are very long and also very wide. That is emulating that German style that I'm going for. And it's also very long because I want to be able to wear the chemise as sort of a gown by itself too. Like I wanted it to go all the way down in period. If you're making a historical chemise, it does not need to be full length. I have basically sewn a bunch of rectangles together at this point, and the top neckline is gathered. I did 2 rows of gathering stitches. Now, if you're making a German chemise or hemmed, they can actually be smocked, and that was a very common thing to do at the neckline. I'm actually gathering mine into a little neckband, which is right here, also chiffon. So I just have the 2 rows of gathering stitches, and I've basically gathered it as much as is possible. And I like the way this drapes so far. It's just really cool. And since I'm gonna be tying the sleeves up, they're kind of gonna go like that. And they're gonna be really droopy and big and wide. And I am pretty pleased. So what I have left to do on this right now is I need to attach the neckband, and then I need to hem the bottom and the sleeves. All right, update. I have now sewn the hems on my hemmed. I've hemmed my hemmed. I feel so clever. You know you like my silly jokes. All right, so silly jokes aside, I've hemmed my hemmed. I really like that one actually. The red stuck in here, but I've attached the collar up here to the top. So this is the extremely gathered neckline. I still do have some threads to cut off of there, and then I'm going to decorate it. So I'm going to put this lovely trim here along the neckline of my chemise. and it's going to be really cool and sparkly. And then I'm also going to put a closure here. I am actually wanting to do a little ribbon that I can tie, so when I put it on, it'll just tie around my neck. Fast forward, I have actually sewn on that trim onto the neckband here, and I've attached a double-sided satin ribbon on each side to tie it. So at the top, it basically looks like a gathered thing with some very, very cool trim. So, all right, let's see if we can put this on. There's a sleeve. Now, where's the other one? All right, very cool. So because I still have the turtleneck on, I am actually just gonna kind of tie this up here really high just to get an idea of what it looks like. Woo! I feel like some sort of an ethereal ghost or something. This is actually really, really cool. This is what I wanted. And next up, I will make the petticoat and I'll make the dress. It's kind of cool that I went with more of the German influence in design rather than the English, since I am using this as a Saint Lucia gown, and the Swedes tended to have a Germanic influence in their clothing at this time period. And that is because Germans came into Sweden in history. It makes sense they would bring their clothes with them. So the reason I made it this way, like as a full length thing, is so I could actually do a belt, obviously something underneath it as well because it's sheer, and that way I can have like another fantasy kind of look. So I figured it would be fun to do another type of like, you know, medieval fantasy or pre-Raphaelite, if you will, undergarment shoot, and this is perfect for it. All right, so I'm gonna get to the petticoat. I may actually not really put that in this video because I'm gonna do a separate tutorial video on how to make the petticoat. So there may be a bit of a fast forward coming up. And then I'm gonna show you guys a bit of the making of the dress. The next layer of this ensemble is pockets. These are not based on German pockets, but rather this is a shape that we see in Italy in this time period. And many of us are also more familiar with this particular shape from 18th century or Rococo gowns. I've already made several pairs of these, and I'm going to use one of them with this dress. I also have a video I will link which talks more about these pockets and how I wear them. On top of the pockets is a petticoat. This is what gives my skirt extra volume. I made this petticoat out of a fake silk, which is a polyester taffeta. Again, not a period correct fabric by any means, but a great fantasy fabric. The petticoat is cartridge pleated into the waistband, which allows it to have a lot of volume. And I actually did film a tutorial on how to make this petticoat. So stay tuned, that'll be coming out in a couple weeks or so once I have it edited. The petticoat has slits cut into the side, which here are actually sort of side front, so that way I can reach my hand in and access my pockets. German dresses from this period tend to have an opening in the front of the bodice, which shows some sort of insert or placket. Here I've created a placket with decoration of sequined lace, which also matches what I used on the rest of the gown. I've also attached some of that lace to my bodice. In the period images, we do see a lot of decoration here. I wanted to bring that quality into my gown while keeping it uniformly white and going for more of the fantasy look. So this sequined lace trim was perfect for what I had in my head. I also like how it adds a little bit of texture to the dress. The dress I made is actually made out of another polyester. That's the theme for this. It's another fake silk, so it is a polyester dupioni, which mimics the look and feel of silk dupioni. One thing I like about dupioni is that it also adds a bit of texture, and that's great because I have a uniformly white gown and I want texture in there to give it a little bit more character. I did vlog some of the making of the dress, and I will show that to you guys now. If you want more instruction on making this particular style of dress, I do have a PDF tutorial which takes you through pattern drafting and all the way with photographic instructions through sewing the dress, and I will link that below in the description. I am currently about like halfway through the dress construction, and the reason that I haven't been filming everything is because I do actually have a step-by-step PDF tutorial for this general style of dress, which I will link to. Additionally, this is not that different from a purple and gold Renaissance-inspired, German-inspired also dress that I made last year, and I have a video on that as well. So through both of those resources, there's a little more on how to go through the steps of making this generic type of dress. So I am going to go ahead and show you guys where I'm at right now. So for this video, I wanted to focus a little bit more on, instead of just how to make a dress, how I have taken a historical inspiration and turned it into something that's more fantasy. And I really wanted to go with that pre-Raphaelite kind of inspiration because I like how you still have that old-timey effect to it. Pre-Raphaelites were in the Victorian era, and they were reimagining typically things like medieval back to ancient Greece and Rome, all types of historical things, but you know, it wasn't like accurate to those periods. It was imagined by the Victorians. And I really like that. So that's kind of what I'm going for here, is like inspired by that 16th century German look, but it's imagined through the eyes of someone who's trying to go for that romantic feeling, but not necessarily accuracy. All right, so down here, I've got basically a few pieces of the gown. So this, as you can probably tell by the shape, is the bodice of the gown. So this is fully lined and it is interlined as well. And then there is some boning in here. I'm using flat steel, and that will just basically hold the shape of the bodice. This one is not intended to cinch necessarily, but it is intended to hold a specific shape around my torso. As with the German style, there's going to be this insert that goes into the front there. Now in period, a lot of times you'll see these where they would be pinned in there. For this one, I've actually added in some little loops and a ribbon to tie them in place. So that way they'll be kind of held to whatever spot works out. Because I also intend to develop this as a product or a sample for gowns that I would make for other people, I want to make sure that I'm making it in ways that are, one, easy enough for me to do it without torturing myself the next time I want to make one, and two, in a manner that it can fit a variety of people. All right, these are the armbands. So the armbands are actually done now. They are just rectangles of cloth that I've sewn trim onto, and they have lacing rings there, so they can be laced. Skirts on these German dresses appear to be pleated onto the bodice. There are many ways to pleat a skirt. For example, you can do cartridge pleating, which I did on the petticoat. For this skirt style, I believe it looks like they are rolled pleats. That is due to the rolled volume you see in each of the pleats there. Because a lot of fancy gowns were made from velvet in this time, playing with velvet has shown me a very similar kind of look and sheen to those rolled pleats. So I do think it's reasonable to do rolled pleats if you're going for the historical look. I also included slits in the side front of my dress skirt, corresponding to where I have slits in my petticoat, so I can reach my hands in through both layers and access my pockets. Many German dresses of this period are depicted with a contrast at the hem. I brought that influence into my dress by taking that same sequined lace trim and using it around the bottom hem of the dress to give it a little texture at the bottom. So the way the pocket slit works is that it is a slit cut in the side seam. In this case, it is sort of side front, so it's a little bit forward of the side, and that way I can wear pockets under the gown and I can just slip my hand in there and access my pockets. The skirt is a huge rectangle of fabric, and it is edged in this trim, the same trim that I used on the insert for the bodice and the armbands. It is very sparkly. I really like it. So I need to finish off the bottom edge of this bodice. So I've already serged the edge of the top edge of the skirt, and I did that so that it's not going to fray. You don't have to serge it. You could use a zigzag on your machine. You could go ahead and hem it down. You know, there's multiple ways to finish it. Since I'm using the serger, I'm actually going to serge the bottom edge of my bodice as well. I've already marked the skirt for pleating, so I also need to mark the bodice for pleating, and then I need to go ahead and pleat that skirt onto that bodice. Once the skirt is attached, I need to add lacing to the bodice, and there's one more part of the bodice I'm going to embellish. So to show you guys a little bit of what's going on with the pleating prep, basically I've marked with pins an equal spacing between these pins along the length of the bodice. And I've done the same on the skirt. I just have pins marking. So what I'm gonna do is then I'm gonna match each pin on the skirt to a pin on the bodice, and that will tell me where the pleats need to be. Now what's important to note is on this particular bodice, the front is not going to be closed all the way. However, the skirt does come across that gap in this German-inspired style. So there are actually going to be 4 pleats right here in the center. So that means there are 4 more pleats marked on the skirt than there are on the bodice. I like to pin from this side so I can manipulate the fabric better. So I just match that up and pin it together there. And then I find the next one and match that up with the next spot on the bodice. And I just keep doing that. And then all of this fabric right here is going to be pleated into that little section. So it's going to be kind of a rolled over pleat. And then I'll just do that for the entire skirt, pleated onto the entire bodice. The belt, consistent with Santa Lucia, is red, quite a contrast to the white dress. I used a beaded floral trim as the main decoration, and it fastens with a buckle. The buckle is a modern one I was able to find easily and quickly, and also inexpensively. I mean, the trim is modern too, so. When I've done dresses like this with a more historical goal, I have used a different type of buckle, and I feel I should note here that buckles seen in the Cranach images are the type with the curved loop on just one side and then fastened to the belt as a placket. Also, there's often a metal piece on the end of the belt as well. Every Santa Lucia needs a crown of candles. I got creative with this using supplies I found at my local craft store in the Christmas decor section. The candles are LED tapers that run on batteries, and the base is actually a tabletop candle holder that happened to be the right size for my head, though it is far too uncomfortable to sit directly on my head. So it had to be well padded for both comfort and structural support. The crown is decorated with faux foliage in Lucia fashion, though I'm sure the most traditional fashion is to use real foliage. All right, so I have finally finished the crown. This thing, not gonna lie, was a lot more trouble than I had bargained for. Funny story is that I actually have a Lucia crown base, which is kind of like the generic one they make for Sweden, and it's like very inexpensive over there and very expensive here compared to there, which is part of the story. So my Lucia crown base is in Sweden. I left it there prior to the travel bans before I knew that I wouldn't be there this year. So when I was gonna make a Lucia gown, I decided to make a crown myself because how hard can that be? It'll be fun, it'll be exciting, it'll be an adventure. Well, it was certainly exciting. I tried several attempts before I finally ended up with what I have. So I used one of those tabletop wreath things with the candle holders, and I ended up padding it on the back side. And what you see here are little loops where I'm going to stick bobby pins in to hold it on. One problem, no matter what iteration of this, was that these metal things were very hard on my head, and I padded out a number of ways. Ultimately, actually, I gotta do a shout out to my friend Lisa, who we were hanging out on Zoom, and she suggested, why not a wig? And I was like, that's brilliant. So the wig actually adds some padding to the head, and also because my hair is very fine, the wig is easier for me to bobby pin into. And there we have this. And then these, the candles, just sit right in there. And they're slightly wobbly, you know, ideally you could glue them in there, but they are not real candles. And the bottom is actually where you put the batteries in. So you can't glue that or else you can't use them. And they light up. Can you see? You can see. So yeah, they all go into this wreath like that, and then it goes on my head. And unlike most videos, I'm not going to put this on in the video, and that's because I'm actually going to wear it in a video coming out in 2 days in which I do a little story time telling you guys all about the Swedish tradition of Santa Lucia. They look even cooler in real life than they do in the video, or at least in the LCD screen of my camera. I'm super excited about this dress and to be Santa Lucia. I'll be baking traditional Lucia saffron buns and putting this on for a special photo shoot, as well as a storytelling session all about the holiday. And it's coming in 2 days because St. Lucia Day is December 13th, and that's in 2 days. So while I scramble for my extra deadline that I totally self-imposed on myself this week, I hope you guys will come back and join me for it because I'm excited to do a little storytelling. I've always loved hearing about different cultural traditions from around the world, and I'm super excited that I'm able to share something from my family's culture with you. In light of the way I have researched German Renaissance clothing and adapted it to make a fantasy gown, my question for you is there a historical period that you would like to see imagined as a fantasy or pre-Raphaelite dress? Let me know in the comments what your ideas and visions are. And if you'd like to see more of my historical research and even historical projects, I'm happy to announce that I'm going to be doing a lot more of that very soon. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you see everything I post here. You can find me on social media as Daisy Viktoria everywhere. My website is daisyviktoria.com. And if you'd like to further support my efforts to continue creating fabulous content for you, I would also love to have you on my Patreon. I look forward to seeing you guys again really soon. Have a magical day and may your holiday season be bright. Bye bye.